So hi there. Today is Monday, May 15th, my brother's 30th birthday. So I said that I would talk more about the show come the mid-season finale, and I have a lot of thoughts. But for the time being, I am not gonna acknowledge that last clip. For a few minutes, we are gonna put that aside and pretend that it didn't happen. Then I'll talk about it at the end if I have time. So I have mixed feelings about this season so far. I don't like how the girl squad has been shuffled around to give Nora more screen time. I find her storyline completely boring. Meanwhile, we don't get to know Chris better. I talked a lot about that in a video that I just posted. And I'm spending a lot of this season kind of wondering who the hell is the main character anyway, because I was so excited that finally my girl Sana would be the main character, only to see her sidelined. So, before the season started, I did not want Sana to get a love interest because, one, I was worried that he might be an asshole like William. Two, I didn't want any sort of love story to take over Sana's story. And three, I kind of wanted to marry Sana myself because I love her so much. But the first episode of this season was such a strong start. It was the best first episode in the show, I think. And I was completely on board with this whole Youssef and Sana relationship. My fears about a relationship taking over Sana in the scenes when she is with Youssef or with her mom or when she's with her brother, that is when Sana felt the most like a main character. Her story was obscured by everything else that happened in this season. When she's with her friends, they don't notice her. But you know, Youssef does notice her when she's invisible. And what really got me on board with this relationship was that he made her smile. I'd see Sana interact with Youssef and she would genuinely seem happier. And she seemed happier than when she was with her friends. So that's what I wanted. I wanted Sana to be happy, and I was interested in this relationship for making her happy. But there were a few things I was worried about. One was that the first episode did a great job of showing me new things about Islam. I'm not Muslim, but I'm very curious about religion. Something that I find very annoying about media is that when it comes to religion, either it's not mentioned much at all in any in-depth way, or you have those really shitty shows or movies or books like Seventh Heaven or those Pure Flix movies that exist solely to promote a religion, and they're very badly made and very bad at understanding other points of view. Way back when, I even made a video about this. I think that was my second video that I posted on this channel, where I want to talk about the books that I read as a teenager, and I meant for that to be a series, but it never was. Link that below, by the way. But yeah, I was really excited to see a Muslim character. After watching the first episode, I learned so much. I didn't even think about a prayer app. I didn't even think about, oh, what would happen if you're at a party or otherwise preoccupied and it's time to pray. The first episode did a really good job of showing Sana's struggle as a Muslim girl in a very white, secular Scandinavian country. When Youssef and Sana was taking off more, I was thinking, yeah, I'm on board with this, but I really hope that I get to see Sana play basketball. I'm really hoping that I get to see more about Sana and Islam, and my wishes were granted because it turns out that Youssef, Sana's crush, who she talked about with her mom about how, oh, I had met this great Muslim boy who, was just perfect for me. Turns out he's not a Muslim. He doesn't believe in Allah. It was so great because, yes, I want religion to be talked about more, but I also want atheism to be talked about more. I'm actually an atheist. And I grew up very religious. I feel like with media, as I mentioned before, media tends to ignore religion for some reason, I guess because it's controversial, even though there's like so many fascinating stories that you can tell about religion. With atheists, I've noticed you have two major types. You have like the atheist by default who never grew up religious, who never really thought about being religious. It's just like how their life went. But the other kind of atheist that you have is the kind who grew up religious and then something awful happened and that made them think, no, God would allow this awful thing to happen to me. And those people are usually portrayed as being very bitter and angry. And I really liked that Youssef didn't really fit into like the angry asshole atheist trope. He was very nice, very charming. I was really excited when Youssef said that he wasn't Muslim because like I know that people are like, oh no, that means that Youssef and Sana can't be together. Oh no. But I like that conflict a lot more than a fucking love triangle. If you're gonna throw some conflict as like the major obstacle why these two people can't be together, I'd much rather it be religious conflict. I can't think of another teen show that dealt with an interfaith couple and had that be the obstacle. Whereas I can think of way too many stories that have had really shitty love triangles that have played out the same way. And I got to see Sana play basketball with Youssef. There was that very beautiful scene where they're like walking home together and Youssef finds like what looks like an old volleyball to me that somebody left behind. And yeah, just amazing scene where I see two people who like each other, who respect each other, who have very different opinions on religion, but they're coming together and having a very mature, respectful conversation where they're not trying to like pwn the other person, they're not trying to one-up the other person. I don't want to spend too much time complaining about William, although I am really pissed off that that William storyline has made it into this season. Oh, but one of the problems that I had with Nora and William was that I felt like they wanted me to get on board this ship just because these two characters were mutually attracted to each other. There's more to a relationship than having two people who are sexually attracted to each other. You need like mutual respect, you need good communication. And that's what I'm getting from Youssef and Sana. I get that they have really great chemistry, they're really attracted to each other, but in addition to that, I can see that they both respect each other. When I saw that clip, The Best from Islam, I was like, this is so amazing. I'm so glad that no matter what the problems that I have with this season, I got to see a clip like this. I got to see two people who respect each other have a civil conversation about religion. I really liked what Youssef had to say about how he felt like he took the best from Islam and like kind of left behind the rest. Whereas Sana said that she finds a lot of value in all of the rituals and stuff. Praying 5 times a day, all that stuff, it gives you focus, reminds you to be a good person. He says, well, I can be a good person without praying, which is a good point. Towards the end of the scene, he asks a question that kind of lingers there. He asks, if religion's so great, then why does it divide society? And that was such like a relevant question because after Sana found out that Youssef was not a Muslim, even though the majority of her friends aren't Muslim, she decided to distance herself from Youssef. She removed him as a friend on Facebook. She stopped replying to his messages. She stopped talking to him at all. She doesn't want to have an interfaith relationship, and in her mind she cannot marry somebody who is not Muslim. So why continue down that path if she's only going to get hurt? You might as well just nip it in the bud while you're still in the crush phase. But still, that question was very fair, because from what we had seen so far, he's a perfectly nice person, and yet Sana decided that he wasn't worth getting to know better because they have opposing views on religion, even if they have similar values. Even though I'm not anti-religion, that's a problem that I have with religion. Instead of like following your own morals, what you feel is right, you just blindly follow a book. And I know that not everybody does that, but that's a problem that I have. I get that her faith is the most important thing to her, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't like the idea of cutting yourself off from somebody over something like that just because a book says that you should. So yeah, I liked that he posed that question. That question kind of hung in the air. And Sana, then when we next see her, she's like praying in her room, but she cannot stop thinking about Youssef. And as soon as she's done praying, she goes to her laptop and she Googles, why can't Muslims marry non-Muslims? So I liked that she's not just taking that at face value. She's questioning that. She kind of blew up at her mom about this. And she talked about this with her brother, and again, a very well done clip where her brother says, what's more important, having somebody who says that they believe in Allah, or being with somebody who lives as though they believe in Allah, who has the same values as you do? And then it all went to hell afterwards. I don't know, when I saw the clip from Friday, I thought, this is a fucking hot mess. There were some positives. We finally got to see Sana interact with Chris. Hopefully we get to see more of that this season. But then there's the introduction of this love triangle that again isn't interesting to me because, as I said, an interfaith relationship that's new, that's fresh, that's exciting. A love triangle is just so fucking cliche. I know that some things aren't supposed to make sense because we're seeing it all through Sana's perspective and she doesn't know everything. Like, she doesn't know why that fight outside happened. But it's a little sketchy to me that this fight happened and then Youssef leaves the fight in order to fetch Sana. His first instinct is not to break it up himself, but to go grab this guy's 17-year-old sister, send her out alone so that she can break up the fight. Meanwhile, he's inside, not dealing with the fight and making out with one of her best friends. Like, I don't think badly of him for kissing Nora because it's not like he and Sana were together. And again, throughout their little relationship, Sana was never the first one to make a move. For the first parts of the relationship, whenever he made a move, she didn't necessarily respond, or she didn't respond quickly, or, you know. Of course, she responded where they play basketball together and have that amazing conversation. However, she could have texted him, she could have made a move, and she could have added him on Facebook once again. So yeah, I don't blame him for moving on because it's not cheating because Sana and Youssef weren't together, but it just kind of seemed like a cheap plot twist. And I felt like everything was happening at once, and it felt like I was watching an episode of Skins, and I do not mean that in a good way. Because in Skins, I felt like they threw a bunch of crap in the show and just saw what stuck instead of actually going with things that I found interesting. Yeah, there's that. Also, I do doubt now why Youssef isn't Muslim, because when Sana asked him why he didn't believe in Allah anymore, he told this story about how Evan had tried to kiss Mikal and how Mikal's very religious and he completely freaked out about it. But then when we see Youssef and Evan in the same room together, something about their body language seemed completely off. Evan looked completely terrified, and Mikal was nowhere to be seen. So this whole story about it being about Mikal, that doesn't add up to me. And if he told this story and it ended up being a lie, then that would make me rethink his entire personality, because before he seems like a good guy, but how can you lie about something like that? That's a huge thing to lie about. So I don't know. We'll see how this storyline turns out. I'm kind of disappointed, as I said, by that last clip. I don't want Youssef to be an asshole. I wanted to see how an interfaith relationship would play out, because, again, that's different from what we've seen in other TV shows and movies and blah blah blah. It'd be really frustrating if instead it's like, no, let's have a fucking love triangle instead. Let's have Youssef turn out not to be this amazing, charming guy that we thought he was, but some manipulative, lying snake. I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the season turns out. But yeah, I will talk to you soon, and yeah, bye.